Okay, welcome. I guess the students that left didn't get the message that their departure will be considered when graduation awards are considered. And they didn't get the message that the class that was dedicating one of the rooms in honor of it with the gift that's being given had put some strings attached to it. They wanted to remember the president that was running the school at the time. That was Admiral Brockett. So we're going to institute some of the rules that were enforced for that home. The president will be weekly inspecting for neatness and tidiness and beds made with hospital corners. And the rule that when members of the opposite sex are in the room at the same time, one foot must be firmly planted on the floor at all times. I will give you a bit of an update. Yes? Where was the beards? Tough to do. Okay, let's tell you a little bit about what's going on at Webb these days. So we have 105 students this semester, 25% of them are women. We have accepted 28 for entry next August. That is our target maximum that we have, 28. 9 of them, 32% of them are women. But what we didn't note when the seniors were up here, that actually the seniors are graduating a class with 9 women. It is the largest class in Webb's history with women. 35% of that class were women. So we're actually just keeping overall at 25% because we had a couple of years when the numbers were a little bit less. The acceptance rate had gone up this year because the number of applications had gone down. We reinstituted this year a rule that had been in place before COVID, and that's that you must have an SAT or an SACT test. And we had discontinued that during COVID because you couldn't take the test during COVID, but we put that back in force. We do believe having that information is important to know the caliber of the students that we're taking in. Many of the major colleges or top level colleges today have gone back to reinstituting them, the Ivy League, MIT, Caltech, and many others. So we took that step as well. But we believe it did impact the number of applications. At the same time, for example, last year when we had an all-time record of 250 applications, 50 of them were from overseas, many from Nigeria to India. These were students that obviously were never going to get into Webb because they didn't get the scholarship given their immigration status. So we've actually gone down to only about 20 of those this year. So the fact is we're getting rid of a number of, let's call it non-impactful applications. So that's not a bad thing either. Compared to the days when we were applying to Webb back in the, many of you were in the 70s, let's say, or in the 80s or 90s, we have a very intensive applications process. Students come the night before, prospective students come the night before to Webb. They take both a math test and a verbal and written test. They will associate with students overnight. We want to be able to gauge how they interact with students. Are they interested to be here? If they spend all of their time on the phone sitting in a corner someplace, they're probably not curious and interested in the Webb experience. That maybe isn't a good fit for them to be here at Webb. And the next day, of course, they have interviews with faculty, with myself, with admissions. So it's a much more intense process than it used to be. And I think we bring in people who, will want to be with us and can make it through Webb. And we see that when we'll talk later about both the retention and graduation rates. And of course, as always, we have been looking beyond just interest in Marine. We're looking for leadership attributes and strong academics, of course. We have about $315,000 a year in demonstrated need. That's to pay for the room and board and other fees that we do charge. And as we do cast a wide net, and we are looking for those students that, for example, might be first generation or may need support in paying for those fees. That's about for the last 3 years, that's been about the level. So we are able to help those to meet full demonstrated need. That's the promise we make to the prospective students. And so about 57% of that gap is funded by scholarships, many of them contributed by persons such as yourself, 27% from grants, typically from the U.S. government, and 17% from loans. This year, we've been able to reduce the loan amount to $2,250 per student for the year. So there, for those students, and there are, I think, 20 of them this year that have demonstrated need. They do have some amount of loans when they would graduate, but fairly nominal compared to their earnings capability when they graduate from web. Student life is in full swing. All the things that you know from your days, and maybe not in the older days. Ski trips, going to SNAME, the full senior class goes to SNAME, the full junior class goes to the OTC conference in Houston. Society of Women Engineers this year was in California. Did I get that right? Yes, I see some nodding. Webstock, of course, comes up in early June. Gatsby, that's the big formal dinner. Etiquette dinners, we now move that to junior year, and we do that before the junior years go off to OTC. So we hope they can sit with the movers and shakers in industry and conduct themselves well while having a nice dinner. The dinghy sailing team qualified for nationals for the fourth year in a row. Congratulations, Grant. They haven't yet they've not cracked what happens, you get 36 teams, you got an 18 plus 18 East and West, and the top 18 go on to the last 2 days of a 4-day event. We haven't yet gotten to the last 2 days, but let's hope, knock on wood, that this is the year that we make it to the last 2 days to get into the finals. Soccer and basketball did well. We're winning some games. Not all the games, but some. That's good. Offshore sailing, of course, is underway. And I mentioned last night that the Heritage Society, to those that were there, that we have published, and you can go to see on the website, our web values. We want to identify what makes a Webby, and we have identified these values after discussions amongst the board, amongst the student body. They are excellence, community, and opportunity. And I think we can all find common themes that fit into there. On the website, we talk more about what those mean and how we embody them and interpret them. But that's something that I think is gaining some traction with you'll hear more about our new website design we're working on, because we want to really define who is a Webby and what is a Webby like. And we think these words do really capture that. So a couple of things happening on campus. We have a new person at admissions, Natalie Coutier. She is the third of the team. She, after the admission season completed by the end of April, she's been hitting the road now, getting the word out about web. We have an important objective to increase the reach and visibility of web. And going to, college fairs are something, but I'm not sure that's necessarily the best tactic. Maybe locally, it really is in finding those, call it, types of organizations that will really be feeder schools for web. They can be marine interested organizations, whether they're involved with yachting, whether it's involved with a historical maritime perspective, and other STEM type schools. There's one or two or three high schools now that are very STEM oriented, and we've established a good relationship with them. We need to find more of those. What we'd like to have is that every great STEM oriented student in high school knows about web. They can choose not to go, but they should know about web. We're recruiting now for a new professor for ship design and naval architecture and marine engineering. And we have a NAVSE professorship that's been awarded to web. Dean Werner is here, and he's trying to look at how do we fit those positions into our curriculum. Who will those people be? There are certain attributes or requirements for the NAVSE professorship. It will be a funded professorship, which is good, but still you need to move some people around to do some work in those areas. And how do we put that jigsaw puzzle together with the right people is a work in progress. I think there are meetings with the Navy at the end of May where we get some more information on how we can structure things. The typical NAVSE professorship spends a good chunk of the money on graduate student support. We don't have graduate students. We're proposing alternatives that we hope the Navy will accept, and we can get that as a base for our funding. To go to Southampton in the fall, 6 have applied and 3 will go. Freshman retention, I mentioned, our numbers are up. We're at 94%, which is a good number. And the graduation rate is 84%. And for those of you who have been here many years ago, you will remember numbers as low as 50% or 60% things like that. So this is a much better number. And I think a lot of it is, how do we, if we do more work on selecting the right people, both based on academics and fit, you're more likely to have somebody that will make it the full 4 years through. At least in my class, a number of those that dropped out, it was either academically they couldn't, cope with it, or they hated the lifestyle. But if you can sort of check for that fit on lifestyle earlier, you can try to, get the right people in to begin with. Sophomores take an IMO STCW course. That's Standards of Training, Certification on Watchkeeping. That's a 1-week course that's given at Fort Schuyler. All kinds of safety issues and firefighting go into that. That qualifies them to go on ships these days. In the days when I went to school, there was no certification and you just went, but that isn't the case anymore. The Bailey Foundation, we got a $150,000 grant for the Marine Engineering Laboratory. So Professors Royce and Boyd are putting together programs to do various testing and rigs to fulfill that grant. And it's interesting work that's going on, new work, including some students involved with that. And the Booth Ferris Foundation gave us a grant for $200,000. It's being used to fund the rebuilding of the website. That's $150,000 and $50,000 for marketing. These are very important things we have to do to get the word out about web, and it's great to have funding for that. Before I leave this, there are 2 points I don't have on there, and let me mention one to start with is at the end of October last year, the board of trustees elected a new chair, and John LaBerge is the new chair of the board of trustees since then. The other thing, then, you will all be, well, not all of you, those that have been in, those that have information that was impacted will be getting a letter in the next few weeks. It's taking much longer than we thought. In September of last year, we had a data breach incident here at Web. Some hackers got into the Web system. We basically became disconnected from a Monday through a Friday, but we have a very good backup system. We were able to restore all of the systems. However, the hackers did make off with quite some data. Now, we are obligated legally to inform those impacted by that, that they are impacted by that data breach. And especially for the cases where you have PII, personally identifiable information, including if it's Social Security or driver's license or a passport number, and things like that. It depends on your state and all the disclosures. So we had a company that is doing what's called data diving and getting basically into all of these terabytes of data that we have and doing an investigation onto what data was impacted for each individual who may have been in many of the records. Unfortunately, we have 36,851 individual personnel records. Now, how can we have that many people, you begin to wonder? Well, what we were doing 10 years ago, we were buying some lists of prospective students from various groups, and they had some PII on there. And also with at that time, FAST, which is the Federal Student Aid Organization, would be circulating certain information on applicants, including Social Security numbers. And even though those people never actually even applied to WEB, there are these lists of people with Social Security numbers. So we're having to wade through all this data and then basically informing them. So you will be getting, if you were impacted, not everyone was impacted by any means, but if you were, you will be getting notification and various mitigation steps for that. But it is unfortunately taking much longer than we had expected. Any questions on that? Okay, we're committed to engaging with our community. We're conducting, for the third year in a row, 2 sessions during the Summer Engineering Academy. Webbies are working as program leaders, and of course, our staff works to run the programs. Engineering Day we had last week, that is for middle schoolers and I guess upper elementary school students. And we had 88 attendees last week. They were in all day Saturday. And basically the students run this whole day program. It's really great. You know, they have 4 different kind of experiences. For example, they'll make little aluminum boats and try to float them in the the fountain outside in the front. Luckily, it was a nice day. They see how many pennies you can get in, and the winners are the ones who have a design that can hold the most pennies. So a little bit of exposure to what, boat designed or, things are. Engineering principles. Another one is they make this kind of a bridge with what do you call it? Things you have, the ice cream sticks, right? They make those bridge things. So it's to expose them to engineering, to STEM, and a lot of enthusiasm, especially for the students that are running these programs. It's great to see. And the Bailey Foundation has given us a grant to run these programs or take them to high schools. And we are doing that. That's faculty putting together those programs. One thing that we have to do is to make web known, and you'll see a lot of social media activity. I don't know if all of you are on social media, but if you are, you will see us being more visible these days. Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm not sure. Kay will know more about those. I'm not on all of those social medias, but at least a few of them. But the point is, the prospective applicants of tomorrow, they don't look at the normal kind of things that you might look at, the normal data streams. They are active on social media. If you want to be known with them, you have to get to them on what they're looking at. So we have to be active there. As I mentioned, we want every one of these students to know about web. And this is one thing that I put up every year. It's called Pay Scale. It's the best value colleges. They rank, and we are 6th again this year. So the top ones, if you can't read it from that distance, Harvey Mudd, MIT, U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, Kings Point, Caltech, West Point, Webb, then Stanford, then Harvard, and SUNY Maritime. So we do rank well when we talk about the value, which is measuring the returns, meaning the earnings after college compared to the cost of attendance. We do very well, and that is one of the main reasons why we value opportunity as one of our values, because the opportunity for a meaningful impact and a meaningful career, it's a great investment, simply put. Facilities changes. You see a lot of things going on campus. Since last year, we replaced 2 fire escapes, the ones on the fronts of the fronts of STH. The old ones had been condemned by the fire marshal. If you've seen, not everyone has noticed it, I saw, the windows to the library, those large windows, they're all new. You used to have these small pane windows. They were made of steel. They were rusting through. When the wind howled from the northwest, which it often did, you would feel the breeze blowing through. So we have these beautiful new windows, well insulated, high energy efficiency. We put them in. The Thomas Conference Room, which is the wing at the end of where the student dining room is down there, is where the students have their sessions with Dr. Stein in the afternoons and evenings. It's a very comfortable, redone room now with new windows down there. The back of the model tank needed new windows. We have a lot of new doors around campus. You might have seen them around the QDO courtyard as you came in, the model tank, the gym, looking back courtyard over there. There's 2 sets of doors, the patio doors, which you go out to get your drinks. Later on, have new doors as well. Those would be ones that occasionally would blow open in the northwester, and the rain and wind would come through, so we're nice and sealed tight there. There were some students, by the way, who really hated that we replaced the doors. They said, we loved our wooden doors. I said, yeah, I love my wooden doors as well, but that, I loved it in 1975, not today. So anyway, and all the doors to the fire escapes, of course, were replaced. We were putting in new boiler control systems for to be able to better regulate heat. We had 2 temperatures, cold or overheated. And now we can actually modulate, regulate temperature. New steam control, automatically control valves, modulating the amount of steam going to the rooms. And then our vacuum tank, all of you, of course, know very well your boiler system design, right? And how important it is to have a good vacuum on your boiler? Well, our system failed and we had to put a new system in, 50 grand, but that's what you got to do. Brick repointing and waterproofing, we did that in the front of the building. We have to keep the water out. I mean, we will have, you'll see it later, we have a lot of projects we have to do with the bricks around this building. They haven't been tended to for many, many years, and something that needs to be done for the next 50 to 100 years because it's past their life. There's a new kitchen in the White House. By the way, you may not know how many people are living on campus these days. Um, in the White House, we have two families, one with one little girl living there, and a second one on the way. And we have in the gym apartment, we have someone living there. Above the model tank, we have a professor with his family, including a little boy. Our admissions director lives above the model tank as well. And let's see, yeah. And then we have, of course, the facilities director, and then Lori and I living there. So it's I think we have 14 people living on campus full time right now. So it's a busy place. Having those apartments above the model tank has been a great draw for bringing in new professors, expensive area here to live in. So that's great to have. We have a new, it's not quite operational yet, I think, because we still have the camera here, but there's a new auditorium video system that's being installed. We'll be able to have automatic video. When you want to do really good video quality for, say, a zine lecture in the evening, you need to have better technology than we've had. And we do have funding for that from a grant, so that was good to make that investment. And in the archive, we have new storage racks for our artworks, the original artworks that we're not displaying. And finally, the Rosenblatt Gallery, that's the one in front of the library. You can see that we've redone that one. After we replaced the doors there, we found that basically the front, or the wall facing the looking back courtyard, basically the plaster was all coming off and it was not survivable. So we had to pull all that off. We put in studs, put in proper insulation, put in a proper wall. We redid the room. There's new furniture there as well. There's a model up there donated by Carl Kirkman, class of 65 or 66. I'm not sure exactly the year. And it's a very lovely model of young America. It's a large model, and it's young America on the launching ways. By the way, that's one of William Webb's clipper ships. It's on the launching ways. When you look at it this way, you see it about to be launched. You see them sawing through the connector to basically separate the launching, what do you call it, supports, so they can go down the ways. But go behind it, and you'll see a cutaway of the hull. And the way they did cast iron, or I should say wrought iron strapping around the hull to preserve longitudinal strength, or gain longitudinal strength in ships of that era that were getting too big to only rely on the wood structure. So it's a clever model where you see each side, and on the back side, they even have all of the woodworking tools they use are in there. So please take a look at that if you haven't seen it yet. My view is that our public spaces have to be as excellent as we expect our students and their performance to be. And we haven't always been that way, but we're going to get there. So give us a bit of time. Major projects in the works for next year. If you go on from the outside terraces through the steps up to the upper levels, you'll notice a number of cracking stone steps. This was a warranty issue when we built the Couch Academic Center. We replaced about half the steps. The other half will be replaced starting actually this week coming. They were supposed to be done before this weekend, but delays as usual on construction. Unfortunately, we have that, but nothing we can do except put in the good stone, or put in good stone. If you look behind Haberley, on the side of Haberley, if you've been down there, you see a lot of bricks getting loose, the structure getting in poor shape that has to be redone. We have leaking chimneys up in Stevenson Taylor Hall. Those are going to be done next fall as well. And we have, again, more windows to do. The front of the gym, tea room, and then looking back, again, windows get to be very old. One day, and we have it in our 10-year infrastructure plan, that we have to replace most of the window, or all of the windows in Stevenson Taylor Hall. They are original to the building. They served well, but they are 113 years old. And they will not last forever. It's a huge expense, no doubt. We're dabbling with some window types. I don't think the windows we've been putting in and until now will really do well in a bigger project like that. Basically, many of the new windows that are designed for homes have rather thick framing on the edge, which is okay for a home window because you have enough glass, it's big enough. But once you have these very small windows, which we do have in this building, you do block a substantial amount of light. So I think more likely we're going to have to find a vendor that can design, call it custom windows, most efficient typically to do that in one go. Probably $1.5 million expense, not cheap to do that. and we're seeing how we can phase in to do that over time. We have a long-term plan to do all the infrastructure. A lot of it is making up for work that has been not done over the years. In New York City in the 1970s, they called it deferred maintenance. It's a little bit the same situation we have here. And we have a couple of buildings that are somewhat underutilized. Modley, which is the building on the side, which is student housing, but not fully used as student housing. It needs a lot of work. It's old and needs investment. Looking back, which was a graduate center and an office space at one time, now it's the fitness center plus some storage. And of course, we have I guess a son of an alum, John Couch, who of course contributed a significant amount for the Couch Academic Center. He has suggested that he would be willing to partly fund an attachment to the back of the gym, which would be a pool on the lower level and a fitness center and a rec center above it. It's a great idea, but it probably cost $4.5 million. We've had it sort of scoped out in terms of design. He's not willing, he's willing to contribute, let's say, up to a third of that, but you need to complete funding for that. So we now have now to find next steps about who might be willing to do that kind of funding to go to that step. And if we can't go there, if we can't get that funded, what alternatives do we have for bringing our fitness and other athletic facilities up to snuff? So that's one of the things that we have to think about in our long-term plan. Boathouse, I see Joel McMinn, he's heavily involved, sitting in front here on the project. So there's a project plan for construction starting in a bit of time. We're meeting the Glen Cove Building Department on Tuesday morning at 11, presenting the plans and expect to get it back in about 2 weeks. Essentially what you can see here is the concrete block structure, which is the Goldback Boathouse today, and the roof structure above that, which is the framing of the roof, would be retained, but everything else would be new. That front porch would be demolished. Actually, that front porch was an original open porch when it was built in 1951, I believe, and at some point somebody closed it in, but it really doesn't have any kind of a foundation that does anything. And when you build a project like this, where we're going to extend the patio in front and put a roof over it with these kind of glulam beams, an open look there with some fans and such, the idea here is to really make a structure that will last for the next 50 years. So what we're going to do starting in June is basically do the demolition on the front. We'll start to demolish the slab, which, by the way, is not suitable for rebuilding. And the actual beams, the glulam beams and roofing will come at the end of August, and there will be a volunteer team that will be coming probably in September that will help to do a lot of construction work on this. So this is going back to one of the construction methods we had in the old days, where we had volunteers come and help out on campus. Of course, we'll have people here as well that would be contributing. Many of the trades like concrete work, electrical and plumbing and so on will be done by, those that have those skills specifically. But that will be, I guess, by the end of the fall, we should have the project completed. So when you come back for next homecoming, you're going to see this great new facility down by the waterfront. Let's see, web finances. Expenses are about just over 10 million this year. Operating is about 8.9. Capital is about 1.4 million. All of those list of projects that you saw are all of the kinds of things that cost 1.4 million when you add them up. We have 106 students, so our cost per student is 97,000 and change. It's actually fairly competitive. We benchmark our cost against other colleges. We actually run very lean compared to many places. And it means that all of us have to pitch in, doing all the things around campus, especially for special events like this. But that's part of our second value, which is all community, make things happen by all pitching in. We just over 18 is our room and board costs, room and board and fee costs that we charge to students. So around a third of our funding comes from fundraising, 20% comes from room and board fees. And then the endowment, we try to target a 4.25% draw. We think that's a sustainable figure long term. That's about a quarter of the required funding, but you see the gap. 21% is what we call excess draw. And what it means is we don't actually have 4.25, it's actually just north of 7. So that is the challenge that we have and why we actually have and what we consider to be an unsustainable long-term situation. And we'll come to that in a minute about what we are doing about that. Now, macro trends, I mean, if you can predict which way the economy is going, please let me know. Between inflation, is it going to be low because we have a recession maybe coming, or is it going to be high because of tariffs? Nobody knows, and we really, we have to be prepared for all eventualities. The endowment was 74.5 million as of the end of April. It's around a 7% return. We had pretty good international exposure, which cushioned our experience over the last couple of months. Obviously, if you were heavily invested in tech, what's called the Magnificent Seven, you've suffered a big hole in your pocket since then. We didn't have that exposure, so that was good. We lost some of the upside from some of those things, but also don't suffer the downside. But of course, funding all these major projects is a big demand that we do have. We did make the decision yesterday at the board meeting to reduce our loan, margin loan, from 3 million down to 2 million. We're paying 5.5% on that. And room and board and fees, so we don't actually recover the full cost of providing room and board to students these days. We need to narrow the gap to cost. We'd love to make it 100%, but we have to benchmark, and we do benchmark. We're still low against others, but we have to be cognizant that our students we couldn't just increase fees 10 or 15% in 1 year. It would not do well. And we do have many students that also have need. So we have to do it in a way, so we will be increasing higher than inflation, trying to narrow the gap over a period of time. So we're still a great deal, but it does mean we have to work on what those fees are. And our goal is to maintain our financial promise, which is the full tuition scholarship, since we've had with it from the beginning, and we do want to continue that in perpetuity. Giving back, well, you've heard today from Jake, from John already about all the things that make up giving back for Webb. We had Founders Day a couple of weeks ago. We do the Wellwood cleanup once a year. They are learning in terms of giving time instead of giving money at this point. Giving Day was yesterday. You heard of that. The 70%, you heard of that. Around 2.5 million or more per year are coming in from donations, and they are very much needed, as you can see from the financial picture that we have. Our goal is to be able to do better than that in terms of long term. We would like to be able to increase our endowment with your donations rather than have to spend it on running the school. But that will take a more serious fundraising effort, which will come in a sec. And again, thanks to the reunion classes, 1955, 70, 75, 85, and 95. Again, thank you for your contributions at this time. So, the Investing in Excellence campaign. You may have heard of something about this before. You're going to hear a lot more in the future. This is not a formal launch or anything like that. It's just giving you a heads up of what's in the pipeline. We're going to focus on building the endowment. For example, scholarships, professorships, and unrestricted giving are ways to build the endowment. We have about $650,000 a year. $650,000 per student is what our endowment is today. It should be closer to 1.2 million, 1.2 million to be really fully sustainable based on a 4.25% draw. It's a big gap. So we are starting a campaign. We're now in the silent phase. It's going to run until June 2029. The goal you'll hear more about because we have to get through the silent phase first. To date, we have 15 million in pledges or gifts, and we expect that to be 20 million by the end of June. And then we'll be seeing what we can do in terms of fundraising raise over those years. And you'll hear more about that. Eric had mentioned about the road shows that'll happen next winter. We're going to have those alumni events to roll out more to you about what we're doing and how you can participate in this campaign. And one of the things that if you graduated in the 1970s or older, you can also put estate giving into there, because what we said is you have to be at least 70, you and your spouse have to be at least 70 to contribute with an estate pledge towards that campaign, if you don't want to do it through current giving. So that's something you're going to hear quite a bit about in the future. And finally, what's important to look forward to? Innovation and sustainability. These are things that are what's coming in terms of education in the future. We had a presentation at the board meeting from some experts in AI. What's going on with AI? How will AI impact the educational world, both in terms of how the dean is arranging his curriculum, because we have conducted a curriculum review. There will be a change to the curriculum through a update and transition plan, which was discussed with the industry working group that was done on Thursday. And you will hear more about that in due course. There will be rollout sessions. But the goal is you have to keep updating the curriculum to the latest techniques, including things like how you manage data, machine learning, AI, and all those techniques. Sustainability, of course, is very big in the shipping equation these days. Perhaps less in favor in Washington, but certainly for all shipping companies, it's very high on their agenda. We're kicking off a new strategic plan review. The last one was done 2018, 2019. This will be the next 5-year plan looking forwards. And finally, if you've been reading the news, you've never heard more than today about the naval architecture profession. You'll hear, on the Hill and from the administration, executive orders coming about shipbuilding and rebuilding shipbuilding the U.S. It's a huge endeavor. It's a very ambitious endeavor, perhaps quixotic, I don't know. But certainly that is the direction that we would like to move. And we fully support that because, of course, our graduates move into that profession. And so the question is, how is it going to be done? What can we contribute to making it happen? And certainly, if not on the commercial side, is a bit of a challenge, but even the naval side is under stress these days. And roughly a quarter of Webb students do enter the defense area in some way or other. I did a survey over the last 4 years' classes, and between working in Navy shipyards, working for NAVSEA or ONR, or working on design firms that are primarily doing design work for the Navy, it's around 25% of our grads. Last year, we had 2 grads that got what's called a SMART scholarship from the U.S. Navy, and they will go for a graduate degree, either PhD or master's, and then go work for the Navy longer term. So these are interesting things. Definitely the country needs it, and we'll support it because it's obviously something that fits in with our mission, if you will, of ship design. So these interesting things, we don't know where it's going to go, but we'll certainly do our part to support it as it moves forward. That's all I have. Does anyone have questions for me?